I mean, honestly, just the things like I feel like it sounds funny to say, but kind of went out of style. Like the whole, what is it, a dolly in and push out. Maybe the other way around, I don't know. But that whole like old horror thing,
Oh.
to make the hallway look much longer and stuff. It was cool when I was done like at first, and now it's just kind of cheesy. I'm sure there's a few more things like that. Um, even I would say too much handheld action. Like
Okay.
where it's good to have a handheld, but there'll be like a scene where it's just cutting so fast, all you see is like a limb and like a one punch or something like that. Jason Bourne was kind of famous for that. Even though they're really good movies, I feel like every single other action movie started emulating that, and it just got tiring after about 20 years. Yeah, I mean, so I guess the reviews are good on the new Superman at least. I
Yeah.
don't, I don't know. I'm on the fence if I'll see it or just wait for Max. But yeah, I mean, the pandemic didn't help, and I can even see that not even just the numbers, but anecdotally. Like my best friend, he used to go to movies sometimes, like not super often, but I feel like he still went, 5, 6 times a year,
Right.
and I don't think he's been in a movie since like 2019 now. So, I think there's some people who like kind of establish these habits of just, oh, well, that's just not something I do anymore. And when you start going to theaters, it's so much fun seeing a movie like when it really is presented well.
Right.
But the problem is it's a hassle. It's like there's people everywhere, somebody's chewing ice and people taking their shoes off and popcorn everywhere and all this stuff. And so we went to see Jurassic World last weekend,
Mm.
and there was something wrong with the center channel. Like it was probably the settings, but the dialogue sort of reverberated, and I just could not. It was like 30 minutes just thinking about what would cause that problem, and it was like
Yeah.
totally thinking about the movie at all. And I just honestly was wishing it was subtitled and I
Wow.
didn't have to hear it or something because it was so bad. So those little kind of experiences going to a theater, they stick with moviegoers, and I'm traumatized. No, I'm just kidding. But
I
that is a good question. Wow, that's funny. I think it has depended somewhat on the era that we're in,
Yeah.
because I think leading like through the first year or two of the pandemic, streaming was spending so much money, and everybody was staying home, and it was everybody's hero because, well, at a certain point at least, because you know there was an opportunity to make a lot of money doing something that like maybe you wouldn't have been hired for in the past, without so much content. But I also think that, like, as far as an indie filmmaker goes, like a lot of times I would kind of say the enemy, because like we had trouble casting our movie, and you're going through the list, and everybody's saying, like the casting directors and the producers, that some of these people just sit around and they wait for Marvel. Like
Yeah.
they don't want to say yes to your independent movie because they're like, well, I don't know, I don't want to commit to something 4 months from now because maybe Netflix will call, or like maybe Marvel will call, Disney will call,
Yeah.
and so that it becomes this weird thing where like people don't want to get out and work because maybe someone will call with a better offer.
Yeah. Which
um,
is
but
crazy.
I think that there is an opportunity for for indie filmmakers to get their movies out there and seen when we're talking about all streaming services, like where my movie is to, like Tubi and what's the other one, Freebie, and all those
Oh.
kind of other things.
Yeah.
For better or worse, there's movies out there that wouldn't have gotten any sort of distribution
Yeah.
20 years ago. And that's good for some movies. Like, there's some real gems out there.
Oh, yeah.
But then there's other things that are something we would barely consider to be a movie. And it's still on Tubi collecting $3 a day or whatever, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, it makes perfect sense. So I feel different ways depending on who you ask. Like if you ask Jonathan, the film buff, I'm annoyed at it.
Okay.
But like, if you ask Jonathan, the person who like works in film, and I'm like, well, I mean, it kind of makes sense because they're just trying to find something where if you're going to spend $100 million, $200 million, that they want to guarantee their investment. and there is no such thing as a guarantee with film, but there's certainly like a likelihood. So when you look at something like relaunching that I know you did last summer,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean that's a little like that's a little desperate because it's like the first movie wasn't even anything special. It was fine, but
Right.
it wasn't as good as like Scream or anything like that. And so then I feel like they're just like digging through old movies, being like, okay, what can we remake? What can we make a sequel of?
Right.
And it's pretty lazy, and it's not really. I would say it's not filmmaking as art. It's filmmaking as commerce, or like creating a product that you know you can sell. But I can't totally fault them either, because if somebody came to me, if I was, if I had like $2 billion to invest in movies, and they came to me with this amazing new idea that was like $100 million, but no one has ever heard of it, I would be interested in, like, is the idea good? But it'd be very hard to want to fund it.
Right.
And so then when somebody comes to you and is like, hey, we're going to crap out another Transformers movie, like, and you're thinking, well, those usually do well, whatever. And then you're like looking at the numbers going, like, okay, I think if we cast the right people, like maybe we get Glenn Powell this time.
Yeah.
Like, who's a hot, okay, Jenna Ortega and Glenn Powell. Like, I think we can sell that.
Yeah.
So it's very crass in a way, the way that they think about it. It's very much just business like and not really artistic, and that's the part that, like, as a filmmaker, you understand, but as a film buff, you're kind of disappointed about, because you want to see like more original things. That's a good question. Like, I think a lot of us are wondering what direction things are trending.
Yeah.
I think that I think that every so often there's a period of like huge creative flourish.
Hmm.
I think the last time we saw that was really in the 90s, like with Sundance, and,
Yeah.
with kind of festivals becoming a big deal, the rise of your Kevin Smiths and your Quentin Tarantinos and Robert Rodriguez,
Right.
all that crop that came out. And I wonder sometimes, like, because as a film history buff, like, it makes me wonder if this stuff is just kind of cyclical. Because then the last time that you go back, it was like the 70s, where Spielberg's coming out, Lucas is coming out, Francis Ford Coppola, all these people, and it's like a golden age of cinema again. So I don't think we've had that since the 90s, though. Like, not really, in my opinion.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
it's scary.
I think that I honestly think AI is going to sort of usher in the next era. Hollywood doesn't like to hear that, but I've spent a lot of time thinking about that in the last like week or so. How if I wrote a script, which I've got 6 scripts sitting there that I couldn't fund because they're too expensive, right? And
Mhm.
nobody's going to fund them
Right.
for me unless I make it way bigger as a director. But it's just not super realistic. So if I have these tools, and 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 8 years from now, I can sit down and make these movies using just AI. Like, we've already
Yeah.
seen these amazing trailers that came out now. Then there's an argument to be said that what is less artistic about that than going and making a movie for 100 million? Because I did a movie for 100 million, and all of a sudden, like, oh well, like the actor was sick one day, or he had a big ego, I couldn't really get what I wanted. Then the studio came in and gave notes, and it was raining in Italy the whole time, like we really needed it to be sunny, but oh well, we got what we got.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, so if I do that, even with a huge budget, then maybe we get 75% of my vision. But if I made the whole thing with AI, I'm sitting there prompting it over and over again to get the dress color right, to get the weather right, then I would argue the filmmaker is getting 100% of their vision. And yeah, it sucks, I guess, that, oh, well, nobody else got to make money off the movie. I'm like, but the point of making movies is not money, it's art. Like, it needs to be art.
Right.
And so I think that that's going to be kind of exciting. The studios will hate it. All the people who are already power brokers will hate it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what do you do about that guy who's insanely creative? He lives in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and he creates this AI movie that just blows you away.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting future, or even the kind of thing where this is where it could help studios. I have a movie, and if it wasn't for all the like sort of extras and effects and all that, you could probably do this thing for like 20 million, but because of all the other stuff, it's $100 million. That's where AI could really help because it can crowd fill like extras in the background, and you still work with real actors. You still go really shoot the movie, but like you don't need so much money in effects. And I think those bringing those costs down is actually going to allow Hollywood to be more creative because they're looking at a movie thinking, oh, this is a great story. Like this could be a fantastic movie, but dude, we can't spend $200 million on this thing.
Yeah.
And so then you got a bunch of AI tools, and then maybe it's like, huh, we couldn't spend 200 million, but we could spend 50. So if we could do this thing for 50, then sure, let's do it. And I think that's going to open up a lot of like really creative projects that they're because they're risk averse, right?
Right.
They're scared to lose money. Anybody is, I guess. And so they're just reacting from a position of fear instead of like, hey, why don't we be a studio that like releases original new stuff? But that doesn't exist, right? I mean, you've got Warner Brothers makes a bunch of DC movies and
Right.
a bunch of other stuff, and it's like, of course, Disney's got Marvel, Pixar, which does sequels a bunch, and then Star Wars, and so it's kind of the thing for everybody. I mean, you have to sort of tremble in your boots when you're seeing like the Emoji Movie 2 or things like that, where you're like, we didn't need the first one, you know.